Hello everyone, and yes, we are back. We are still going on with interviews with tournament winners. We are rebranded under a new name. We are going to call this series Peak Performance, and our first peak performer is none other than Daylton. How are you doing, man?
Pretty good. Had a nice week, obviously, after this, and yeah. I slept very well after the tournament. I can say that much.
I bet you did. I mean, I'm calling you a player that's more like the king is dead, long live the king, because you are participating in tournaments here and there, but whenever you're participating, you're just winning the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate it, but yeah. I mean, I don't play a lot, that's true. It's mostly like time restricted. Like, I've played my fair share of grassroots tournaments in beta and like the early seasons. But yeah, it's just like lacking time, and whenever there's like a sick tournament, of course I'm interested though.
So, Amazon University Sports Master for Runeterra this time. Can you tell us a bit more about the format, or what were you supposed to play in?
Yes, so the format was a double elimination bracket basically, which was played over 2 days. And for the format, we basically had Riot format, except for the fact we can only use a region twice in 2 lineups. So you could only bring 2 Noxus decks or 2 PNZ decks and so on. And we had to select 4 decks instead of 3 because the grand final is played as a best of 5. And because they don't want to do a bracket reset because of that, they're just giving the guy who wins the winner bracket a free win. So he starts 1-0 in the series and basically just has to win twice instead of 3 times. So yeah, that was the format, double elimination, best of 5 finals. Otherwise, it's best of 3 and Riot lock except for the 2 region rule.
Did that impose you any problems, like just having to bring 2 Noxus decks, for example, or there was no biggie?
I realized how much deck building relies on either Noxus or Shurima if you want to target Overwhelm or Azrael. Because I felt like people are still gonna be on like either targeting Overwhelm, like alongside that maybe because it's like good into TLC and Nasus, right? Which should not be brought together due to the same weaknesses, and it's hard to ban them out. So it was really hard to bring aggro decks and like follow the rule, which is why I ended up bringing the Lobster lineup from Seasonals, which was Pirates, Nox, Shurima, and Azrael. And I would have loved to bring Nasus as the last deck, right? Because it's like pretty good into Azrael as well. It's not so good into Overwhelm, which is fine. But I ended up not being able to because I already had my 2 Shurima decks, which is why I had to bring Nightfall, and which is not doing great into Overwhelm, unless you can rush them down or like into Freeze, Ash Nox, stuff like that in general, which we saw a lot from. Like there was a lot of Freeze lineups which ran Foundry, Ash Nox, Overwhelm, all that stuff. So yeah, I'm just glad I didn't have to play Nightfall because it plays more mid-rangey, right? So it loses that matchup, or it doesn't win it consistently, which does hurt the lineup.
All right. Speaking of the decks, let's see the list and let's see what you actually brought. And the first deck is Pirate Aggro. You said you took the Lobster lineup, but I want to understand why did you take it? Was it more time concerning, or did you like the idea behind the lineup?
Oh, I love the idea behind the lineup. I did put a lot of time into like prepping for this with Tilted. We went through a lot of different lineups, a lot of different paint images we drew with with matchup tables and stuff like that. And in the end, like you can never be good into every lineup, right? So what we just were like, okay, if people want to target TLC with like Overwhelm, then like maybe Thralls or whatever they want to bring as well, Azrael, all that stuff. We saw kind of a trend where it's like Overwhelm and Azrael are like the decks that should be most played if people just want to target it. If they are watching the seasonals, I think on EU we also had like Dragons, Nasus, etc. win. On the different servers, it was like Aggro was doing all right, but it never won really, right? So I figured, okay, I don't expect that much aggro, which is why I was first considering an Overwhelm deep lineup, like just a TLC counter lineup, which does alright into Nasus as well. And I also considered Thralls, which with like Icevale Archer, stuff like that you're tagged for the Overwhelm matchup. But in the end, I felt like it's most congruent if you just bring an aggro lineup with, because like people should not be that hard on Nasus, because like it gets soft targeted by the anti-TLC lineups for the most part. Which has been the case. Like there was an insane amount of freezes, like I said, so Nasus was not a good bring. I think only one player brought it, which was Manitas, I think. So yeah, I think that was pretty lucky for me because Nasus wasn't auto banned for this lineup, as we can imagine. And regarding the lineup and the lists, I felt like Lobster did a really good job not bringing spiders and discard, which are like the more explosive aggro decks, and they're winning against other aggro decks, right? So I liked it because he realized he needs to auto ban Nasus kinda, and with both of the decks, or actually all three of the decks, he does have a shot into TLC, which is nice. Like Azarelia crushes it, right? Pirates and Nox Shurima actually are kinda even from my experience. So even though the curve is pretty low on these lists, as we can see, running Battlecasters and like 15 one-drops or 14. So I like the idea behind the lineup. I did put thought into it, but Lobster is just a big brain. So yeah, that's why I yoinked it.
Right, since you kind of snatched this lineup, you still prepared for it, but did you consider changing these lists? I'm going to ask you when it's going to come to the next lists, the other ones. Did you consider changing the Pirate Aggro list? Or would you change it somehow?
I wouldn't now. I was considering it at the beginning, but then Tilton and me were on kind of like a trip where we were practicing deep, and we kind of went back to aggro the evening before the tourney and didn't want to put much thought into it anymore. So Tilton was just like, let's just take Lobster's list. He knows what he's doing. So we just took this. I think in hindsight, I still like the list. Maybe like even a second Battlecaster, even though it's like really awkward to play because you can't play him on 2, right? It's just like a nice finisher. I love the double brother spawn though, like even if it hurts the consistency of Zap for the fervors. I don't think the list needs more top end. Like I think you have to go all in against like Overwhelm and stuff like that as well. It won't matter if you drop like a Farron on 8 or a Jack on 5. Like this will not like they're the Rune Runner and you might be first to block as well. You can't like deal direct damage like we have in this list with like all the early curve. So I think I like the list as it is. I wouldn't change much. And except for the fact that now you'd run Make It Rain in the deck, obviously, right? Because it's like a really good card for 2 mana. It fits Pirate aggro as well, and I think now I'd just put Make It Rain in. But for the tournament, I think this was the optimal list.
You said you would put more in Arena Battlecasters. Why? What would be the use for this card? Because it's not common, right, to see Battlecasters in Pirate aggro.
Yeah, it's actually crazy because like I think. For the lineups I wanted to target, you often wanted to hurt their board on turn 4 or 5 like so heavily that they can't use it to basically get in later. Like especially against Overwhelm and Azarelia, if you force them to trade their students away, their duos like on Overwhelm, like the Ruthless Raiders, which get consistent value like overall by blocking stuff with Troll Chant and so on. I think you're really good. Like considering so many mid-range decks, it's very important to trade on their board before they like get ahead on board. And if you can do that, which Battlecaster does a great job in, right? Because he presents so much face damage basically if it stays unanswered and unblocked. It's really it delays their clock by like 2 turns or something to basically get back on the board and outvalue there. Where basically you can fall back onto the burn plan, the form of Decimate first, etc. So this just I think the Battlecaster is amazing at keeping you like just 1 or 2 more turns like on the board. To maybe push like 1 or 2 more, sneak in 1 or 2 more units to push some more relevant face damage.
Right, and now this is more of a personal curiosity because I'm the fan of the card, but now since Double Up has been quote-unquote buffed, would you play it in the list or would you experiment with it?
Damn, yeah, like I played a few games of like Pirate Aggro now on this patch just to see like how it does into Lurk. And I'm running a 1-off Double Up right now. Which does feel nasty. Like it can like a fast speed Decimate, which is very conditional as we know. I think the card is I don't know if it's yet there, but I really like the card. Like I also played it in my Ezreal TF just for testing because like Monster Harpoon is amazing in Ezreal TF right now with the whole plunder mechanic. Like Monster Harpoon is one of the few cards you have to deal with big units next to Thermo, which generally is kind of risky, like tabbing you out entirely. So I'm testing Monster Harpoon and Double Up like now after the patch. And Double Up, I'm not sure if I want to keep it. It needs some more testing, but it's definitely interesting, and I can definitely see a reason to include it.
Well, it really.
I think I don't think you rely on like Farron as a top end, so that's why I'm running Double Up right now as well. Like Farron just doesn't do enough, so that's why I'm in Pirates. I'm at like 1 Double Up right now, and yeah, I'll see how it performs.
I think you can also afford doing that because not Shurima, but Targon is kind of out, and there were the most buff-centric cards like Sunblast Vigor, cards like Guiding Touch, Pelka Sleep. that would deny you the value of double up. But now that they are gone, you kinda can set up double up easier. Maybe a deny or a retreat can be issues.
Yeah, the thing is, like, Twin Disciplines is like a surprise buff to me. The card is nasty right now. Like, I've seen it like included in all kinds of deck, like Azraelia, Karma Piles, like I think Twin Disciplines is like a card to watch out for, right? But except for that, you're right. Like, Target had the best buffs in the form of, like you said, Paya, all the heals as well that can heal it up. So right now, I think it's like mostly Twin Disciplines and like Demacia decks with short sight, right? So double up, it does hit a few nice spots for sure.
And this is kind of a revert back to the Rising Tides season, and in that season we already had Sharp. Did you have Sharp Sight? I think we already did, or at least we had Twin Disciplines. And if you could manage to push through that double up, you can now.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. No, I think, yeah, I really love the throwback to Rising Tides now, also with the merchant buffs. I'm playing around with a few crazy decks as well. Like I'll go a bit like out of the tournament talk you wanted to have here, just because the deck is so cute. Right now I'm playing Powder Pandemonium with the new Demacia 4-drop that gives +1/+1 to all units that challenge, right? That Silverwing Lieutenant or whatever it's called. And yeah, no, I love the Bilgewater cards being back, like Make It Rain change. Like it hits different if you drop your deckhand into Make It Rain on turn 2 or 3. Like setting it up, that hits different, just dealing 6 damage in one turn.
Definitely.
Yeah.
We can happily go face now.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, for this tournament, I think Aggro was still the best option. And yeah, I think it paid off. Like Tilted brought the same lineup, except for the 4th deck, which didn't matter. And he got 5th, I think, because he lost to the double Ice Shard Overwhelm, which is like still a threat, right? And that you have to respect for sure.
Moving forward, the next deck is yet another burn deck, Shurima Burn, with one of Darius. When you saw this deck, would you have considered maybe to put some Azirs in, maybe remove Darius, or what were your thoughts when you saw what Lobster came up with?
So this makes sense in the lineup, since we also brought Azraelia, right? Which says we can't bring Azir anymore. So it was generally just like you couldn't include him. So having a one of Darius was just there for top end. I did feel like considering you run Rune Runner as well, I think I'd rather have the 1-drops for the early game to push the relevant damage. We see the double battle casters pulling it, like getting a lot of profit out of like the fearsome units like Pet, Bakai Reaper, the units themselves. So I think 1 Darius is perfect. You could consider 2, but I think I wasn't in a spot where I was like, I hope I top deck Darius now as my bomb. It was mostly like, give me my Decimate and I'm fine here. So I think the list is, I mean, I don't know. Lobster did a good job on this one. I think it was my most spent deck, actually, even more than Azraelia, which I think is reasonable because the deck is performing in the Azraelia matchup, obviously, pretty damn well because of Bakai Reaper. It does pretty good into Overwhelm as well. Like, even though the Reaper can't attack, I think the fact that you have Runa's Path and like still you have your Brother Spawned, you have your Merciless Hunter, which is really good as well. Allowing you to drag the fearsome blockers away, or like the high health units, which basically could block your Rune Runner, etc. I like the list. I like the deck. It's pretty good for sure. I was just like in hindsight, I'm like, maybe I don't want to waste both of the good regions on it, because like Shurima and Noxus make the best aggro decks out there. I don't think the SI piles like the Doom Beast and like the Prankster lists like quite cut it. So maybe I would have liked splitting it so I could bring Nasus as well. And might have considered discard eventually, but discard would have been weaker to like the TLC and other decks. So yeah, I think I'm quite happy with it.
I'm still clinging on this one of Darius. And was there ever a moment where throwing Darius made you win the game, or at least put you in a better spot? Or how often did you draw actually Darius, because it's just one of?
Yeah, I think I drew him once in the whole tourney, and there I already killed him before we reached the turn. So he did not quite have his showing in this tournament, so I can't quite judge how good it is to go up in Darius, or how to build it. Like yeah, I don't know. I can't judge it because I didn't have him where it mattered.
Oh, he did the job of a good leader. He trained his soldiers so they can finish the job before he's even on the battlefield.
For sure, just in the back line of the deck, he's just rooting for them. I think he did that well. Yeah.
Darius as a mascot. That is something I did not imagine.
Yeah.
The next deck. Oh, I mean, personally, I don't want to talk about this, right? It's like nobody wants to talk about this unless you are an AZ already.
I
don't
love
know.
this deck. I don't know. Like this, yeah. I think. I mean, I hate to play against it. I'm glad they gave it a good slap on the wrist again in this patch. But yeah, the concept, I don't know. It's way too overtuned. I don't see how you balance it where people say, okay, yeah, this feels fair to play against. But yeah, I feel like the deck is just pretty. I don't know. I had some cool games because you can do a lot of cool stuff with like the retreat and just Shapestone in general is such an insane combat trick that you can basically bluff it at all times and it would basically ruin your opponent, just like Troll Chant would in Overwhelm. So yeah, I did have some crazy games, especially in the grand finals. I think I lost twice on this deck, like once into Zoe Vi and once into the Mirror due to some unfortunate events. And then I was basically 0-2 into the wall. Like my opponent had to win once on Overwhelm into Pirates and this deck. And usually you should queue the worst deck first, right? For basically saving some time and maybe some confidence to go into the last round after you winning your bad matchup. But yeah, I immediately had to queue it because I could not imagine like me going 0-3 on this deck. And yeah, that was a crazy game. Like how much damage you can push in so many different ways is insane. Like in that game, I could decide if I want to go for the duo win con, if I want to go for the Aurelia swap win con, or if I basically just want to win through like dozens of blades going wide. Like I think you can very well adapt with this deck into different combat drinks or spells you have to adapt to. For example, my opponent, I had a read on him having an Ice Shard because he kept it around since Mulligan. It was like turn 6, so it's either like an Ancient Yeti or an Ice Shard, right? Like nothing else like Overwhelm would keep. So I had a read there to not go for the duo win con, to not develop my Ribbon Dancers first. I just went with Aurelia, kept my Droplet alive to have a swap target to double swap later. And I won this with like only 3 units on board because he couldn't block the elusive and he didn't want to Ice Shard preemptively, so I could go for this win con. So yeah, I just feel like this deck can play really flexible, even though it feels kind of inconsistent in the way that it doesn't have reliable draw and stuff, right? So yeah.
Now I'm coming from interviewing a seasonal champion winner on Southeast Asia, and he was playing kind of exact the same list. The only difference was that they were playing one less Blossoming Blade and one of Voice of the Reason. How do you feel about Voice of the Reason in the previous patch?
I feel like if I draw my champions, I'm happy already. So having another brick, I didn't like. Like I think Voice of the Risen. I mean, it can be really nice, right? It can basically imitate the
Inspiring
Marshall. Yeah, the Inspiring Marshall we had before. But I think the only matchup where it really matters is like the Nasus matchup and the TLC matchup, which might be enough to include it. But I felt like most games I lost was because I didn't draw my champions. So running another card that basically profits off the champions I did not like including it. And I talked a lot to Teddy because this is like exactly Teddy's list, right? Like Lobster brought it as well. I think Teddy is the one who immediately came up with it after the Inspiring Marshall nerf. So after talking a bit to him and basically getting some more insight into how to play the deck, like he played that deck for like 2,500 LP in total. Not even considering his climb from Plat to Master, like both of his account and the Smurf account are like together over 2.5k, right? Then he had to win all the way from Plat, so he had his fair share of games on the deck. And yeah, just talking a bit to him, having him backseat me a few games, showed me that you don't quite need the Marshall and the buff aspect of the deck anyways. So if you have Azir, you're basically it's all you need in those matchups where it mattered. So yeah, I think it's if you know how to play it with the resources you have here, you don't need the explosive later turns with the attack buffs.
You've been emphasizing on this importance of drawing your champions. So do you think that's why we are actually running a Rite of Calling in there just to bail us out of crazy situations or bad situations for us?
Yeah, I think like what else? Like if you include another retreat, like you're a bit heavy on like those recalls. You don't have like those targets. I think now like you cut it probably entirely because you don't run Droplet anymore. But yeah, before the patch, it was just like an amazing one-off, right? Because like you have basically you don't mind going for the mana sacrifice to draw your champions because your curve is so low on this deck. So just for consistency, I feel like this was a great inclusion, which I think Broken Ball considered when immediately like the last expansion dropped before Azerelia was a thing, he put that in like 3 times. I was like, dude, you're crazy. You don't play 3 Rite of Callings. Like, you want to draw your champions, and what do you do then? Like, you don't have any draw. But yeah, Teddy ended up on 1, which I think is very reasonable. And yeah, it felt pretty good in those spots where you're basically hoping for a top decks, not seeing your champion, and then you have like another chance of drawing it basically.
You mentioned adding probably another retreat, but that would make it too bricky. So, speaking of bricks, you can tell us about your 2 losses. This is, I don't know, to add a little bit salt in the wound and satisfy my pleasure of hearing about how Azir already lost.
Yeah, I mean, the first game against Zoe Vi, my opponent managed to flip his Zoe because I drew Homecoming, Retreat, and Nopify back-to-back. Didn't have a single champ that game, not a landmark, so yeah, that was just an unfortunate game. I think like you need your champs to win, obviously, like otherwise this deck doesn't function. The thing is, like, either champ works in most scenarios to win it, if you have the Blade Dances to support it. But yeah, that was my first loss. And I think, yeah, my next one was basically not like getting the attack token on 2 in the mirror, so I just lost the game, unfortunately, before the mulligan, which happens sometimes. I got kind of close. I swung in with a, I think, 14 attack duo in my last turn with the Aurelia champ spell, but I wasn't that 1 damage off in the end and didn't make it. And apart from that, I think I won every series 2-0, except for 1 match in the first round where I lost with Pirates into Foundry, because I misplayed not dragging a frozen GP in for the Brother Spawned lethal, basically. So yeah, I think overall, there's not much losses for you to take comfort in. Those were the only 2 on Azerelia in total. I think the deck is was insanely broken. I don't know how good it is now. They got the recall, right? Like the one that Blade Dances as well. I'm not quite motivated to play the deck myself right now because there's a lot more cool stuff to test. But yeah, we'll see how it performs and how it sticks in the meta tier list.
Yeah, speaking about the format, we mentioned it in the beginning, and in the final, it was actually a best of 5, and you needed to bring an additional deck, and your choice, we're not going to feature it, just mention it, was actually Nightfall Aggro. Why?
Yeah. So when I talked to Tilted, we were first on Shurima Burn, like PNZSI, just full on Shurians, Burn, Mystic, get excited, all that. And then I played a few games against the boys, and I went 2-10, I think, against Azerelia. So I was like, okay, I need something else. And because the submit was 1 hour from then, I was like, okay, I need another aggro deck. And I was like, okay, maybe it's just Nasus. And I already locked in Nasus, and I realized, damn it, this is my 3rd Shurima deck, this doesn't work. And I was like, okay, maybe discard, and that didn't work either. So in the end, you don't have a lot of options if you like to find a deck that's congruent with the game plan of the other decks. And in the end, I did not get there either. Like, I queued Nightfall as my last deck, which is quite different from the other aggro decks, right? Like, it loses the matchups the other ones are losing, which are Azerelia and Overwhelm. I think it's like even maybe slightly unfavored. So that's like the thing where it did okay, and I would feel comfortable bringing it because I played a lot of Nightfall. I think the last time we talked, I also brought Nightfall, a different version though, with gifts from Beyond and stuff like that. So Nightfall is still my favorite aggro decks of all times. So I did feel comfortable playing into those slightly unfavored matchups, which are Aurelia and Overwhelm. But the big downside of the deck is that it loses super favorite matchups for the other decks, which is basically Ashe Nox and other freeze decks in general. Like, I think Foundry is not great either. It's winnable, but like you can very easily lose it. So yeah, I played a lot of Ashe Nox. I was thankful I queued it as my 4th deck. And I was very thankful when I made it through winners bracket, so I did not have to play the deck a single time. So yeah, I don't think it's in a great spot right now. It's a very cool deck. I love the deck, but it has very different matchup tables from the other aggro decks we know. So yeah.
I mean, maybe this is an occasion to revisit your previous interview when you won, but something really interesting from what I remember last time when I asked you what kind of player you are, you did not mention you are an aggro player, yet you are finding success with aggro decks.
I figured we'd get to this point in the interview. I think I have to revise my statement of being a control player. I do not enjoy control much anymore. I tried a bit of Karma decks again. It's like cool, but I don't know. It doesn't hit the same anymore. And after playing all that aggro, I think I ended up being one of them. So yeah, I think like if there was a really cool mid-range deck, that would be like still something I'd like. But like, I don't know. I think now it's at the point where like the last 2 tournaments I won were both with aggro. So I think I'll have to basically, I'll have to admit it. So maybe my time of playing mid range and control is over, and that's the only way I can win anymore. But yeah, we'll see that in the future.
I imagine people asking you for advice. Daylton, what are you good at? Oh, I'm good at control. I love the concept. What lineup would you recommend me? Triple aggro.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, there was no real control decks we had with TLC in the meta, right? Because like this kind of combo deck just completely made it impossible to play decks like Karma or Heimer. So I think maybe if I find like a cool Heimer list or something, like I could have some fun. The deck I was most excited for this patch with the changes was like Ezreal TF, which is like more of a tempo deck. I think those were still like my favorite decks from back in the day, like Twisted Fate Gangplank, like during Raising Tides, stuff like that. Then the versions that splash just like Flock and stuff like that. I think that's my favorite one. I wouldn't say I'm like honestly much of a control player. I just enjoyed it in Hearthstone and like Blue and Magic. So I tried to carry it over in here, but I think it's very different in this kind of game, right? Because like every deck is board centered to some degree in Runeterra. So I think the control archetype itself is like a bit different from what we're used to, where it's like not you sling all your cards from your hand in one turn. That is not a matron combo. So I think those are the decks I'll put a lot of time into this patch, like Ezreal TF, maybe some Bilgewater Noxus Pause that are not role playing with Swain, which I don't think is still good enough. I know you were a great Swain TF player yourself. You enjoyed the deck like a lot yourself, but I don't think it's like quite there yet. I feel like it doesn't feel great to drop like a Swain and a Leviathan. I think you're better off playing like a Gangplank right now and just get off utilize the Keg synergy. So yeah, I mean, it was aggro last patch. Both of the tourneys happened in that patch, right? So maybe this patch holds something new from me. And I won't have to completely, consider myself an aggro player.
Yeah, I mean, even in the previous patch, you mentioned there was not real control in the meta because most of the decks needed to do completely something else until they got to play control. If we're talking about Dragons or Demacia Targon overall, you just needed to play the mid-range game until the very last turn when you get to play Aurelion Sol and get to feel proud and say, now I am a control player, now I can play my game.
Yeah, I think I did enjoy Aphelios a lot though. Like I think that's where I still had like most fun in like the last 6 months, because then like Aphelios was gone and we were stuck with this meta. So Aphelios was still like, I don't know, like very control-ish. Obviously, like all the value you get later on, like with the store shapings with Targon in general, which is like quite different now, right? With the Fangs nerfs and basically Aphelios only getting only 1 health might not be good enough. So I think there's still something. There's got to be something for me in the control aspect. So I'll try to find that. It's probably going to be a Karma pile, because I did enjoy my Karma Ezreal and Spooky Karma in beta. So yeah, maybe it's something there. We'll see.
Well, Aphelios got buffed 1 HP, but they nerfed the entire archetype.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, star shaping will not matter too much, right? Like 4 health. Of course, it's something. Like it will be noticeable in like the fact that it doesn't like completely negate a decimate anymore. So those burn or aggro matchups will get closer. But yeah, Fangs dying is very huge for the archetype. So yeah, and the Serpent nerf, which is very significant as well, I'd say. So Zoe in general got nerfed a bit as well. But yeah.
What are your expectations for this meta, or what would you like to be good? It doesn't matter what is going to be good. What do you want to be good?
I mean, I'd love a Bilgewater deck at the top, like whether it's like a Noxus Bilgewater pile or a Bilgewater PNZ. Like either of those being tier 2 would be perfectly fine with me.
Wanna play Fansmith Burn? I can recommend it. It's pretty good.
Fansmith Burn, yeah. We're back to Burn. I see. But
you control the board and aggro the face.
yeah, I'm an aggro player, true. But yeah, also I'm not sure how good those predict archetypes are yet. I think like Echo himself would have been cooler if he made it like non-fleeting, or you could basically do it like Zoe, where when you strike you can also reduce the cost of it in hand. Like I think that would have been really cool and made him like more viable in like other archetypes as well. But there I feel like he's fairly restricted in like the whole Shurima PNZ. predicts we've seen. Maybe if there's something cool, that would be cool. And Lurk, which is obviously like the archetype and the spotlight for this expansion, considering both champs are only playable in there. I did try Pike Overwhelms. Even BB Broken Ball told me can I get off the Copium? And if he says that, you really got to be worried. So yeah, that did not quite work out. So yeah, probably Lurk is gonna be pretty solid, like tier 2, but it feels kind of high rolly. It's like you're pause champing every single time you're attacking and hope you see the shark fin off your deck, like just swimming there. And if you don't hit it, you're just sad. So yeah, in the end, Bilgewater with either Noxus or PNZ would be like the coolest thing for me, and I'd probably spam that.
Like, I think they designed Lurk specifically for labs, because I've only been playing Lurk in labs when you get the support, like get predict every single turn if you get that power, yada yada, but it feels like a labs deck to me, not a ladder deck.
Yeah, I mean the variance in like a high roll and the low roll is insane in that deck. It does not do anything if you miss your first two lurks. If you don't attack on one, you're already sad as well, because you're wasting that. Basically, the nattiest is like you have your lurkfish on one, and then you have the free attack one on two, right? Where you get like both of the lurks before turn 3. So if you already only attack on 2, it's kind of similar to Azralia, where you miss like a lot of the potential of the deck. And I don't quite like these kind of decks that rely on the attack token that heavily and like on basically drawing the nuts in that regard, which I think Aggro does a good job of. I think we talked about in the last interview that like Aggro is just consistent. It's not a high roll. Of course, if it happens against you, it's always a high roll, but that's a different story. So yeah, I don't see Lurk quite there. I can see your point. Yeah.
I think Runeterra got us used to, you can build very consistent decks that have a shot, and if you're playing high rolly decks, you're not going, or decks that rely on randomness, you're not getting there much. Because Lurk in the end is the true high roll deck. You either have something on top of your deck or you do not. There's no in between.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I don't like these kind of decks. I feel like, I don't know, I want something tempo-based again. Like I said it already, Bilgewater. Insane Region, it was buried like at the ground of the sea for a good half year now. And just seeing that Make a Rain buff is already giving me high hopes that there might be something that we have yet to discover. So
we will see. In the end, you do know that we have at least 2 traditions in the interviews, and first and foremost, if you got anyone that helped you practice, that helped you come up with decks or anything really, dump it all here. It's their moment of glory.
I mean, first should probably be Lobster, because I shamelessly yoinked his lineup, so thanks for that. That one, big man. Otherwise, I prepared with Tilted, like who also played in the tournament. Pave, like the co-caster of Spark, which you've probably seen him with for Uniliga and stuff, like he helped us a lot because he was like, he's very invested in that whole thing and wanted Germany to win this one, so he helped us a lot with like spreadsheets and data and stuff like that. And apart from that, like Broken Ball, obviously, being there for like practice, and Sorry, who was completely useless, but is there for mental support. I guess he deserves a shout out as well. But yeah, sorry, you were completely useless this time, telling me to bring Swain TF 3 times 3 days. So yeah, thanks for nothing, but you're still appreciated. And yeah, Simon, actually, he's on a hiking trip right now, but I DM'd him a few hours before the tourney if he thinks Nightfall is garbage. He said like, yeah, it loses both matchups, but bring it regardless. So I guess Simon deserves one as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And with that, we are getting to the end of the interview. Where's that last tradition we mentioned? If you would have anything to tell the people as your last thought to the audience, what's that thing going to be?
Yeah, I mean, it's time to play the game again. Like, Azralia's gone, or hopefully gone for a bit. I haven't seen it as much. I think Lurk does a good job in having a good matchup into it as well, considering you can flip Pike easily and then just win off the game of it. So yeah, get creative, like try a few decks here. This expansion seems pretty good with that many nerfs and buffs. So yeah, apart from that, yeah, see you the next tournament, I guess.
See you the next tournament. The next tournament you're going to play, because you are on these weird breaks.
Yeah, I'm not sure what else I'm gonna play. It might just be seasonal. It might be something cool that's in between. But as you know, with Crosschart being removed, like the tournament scene is getting a bit more cut down for us. I'm playing this a team tournament with Sorry and Broken Ball. That's like a league happening, like just one game a week or something when we want, and that's going in for 1.5 months. We're just doing it for fun to get an idea of like the tournament meta for seasonal, for etc. But yeah, I don't expect many huge tournaments to pop out, so it might just be seasonal for me.
Actually reminded me that I am casting that.
Oh, so you're gonna see me there for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a huge tournament, right? But I think it's pretty cool to bring like teams together. We're playing it mostly for that, just like getting our crazy brews out there. Like Sorry and Broken Ball, both like crazy players, right? Sorry bringing Swain TF to Fight Night, and Broken Ball just bringing complete piles and calling them nasty. Like, I think it's gonna be a lot of fun. So yeah.
Like, it's nice because the EU tournament scene is pretty much non-existent. We just relied on going over NA and winning their prizes, basically.
Yeah, that's how it was. And now we have like Amazon sponsoring our Uni League, which is nice. Like, I'm gonna play that this month. I totally forgot. We have the finals for this, which is like I think a top 8, which I qualified for. So I'm playing this. And yeah, I mean, I feel like the only huge EU tournaments we have are the Amazon sponsored ones. So yeah, that's gonna be hard to get into as well. But yeah, we'll see.
We know the rule. Whenever you're playing a tournament, you're winning it. So yeah, I won't doubt you won't win that one as well.
Yeah, I hope so. We'll see. We'll see.
We will see until the next interview, probably, and hopefully the next interview with you. But until then, thank you guys for watching and see you next time.